There is a voice narrating a version of the Odyssey right now, reaching thousands of listeners, and it does not belong to a living storyteller in the way you would assume. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that single detail has quietly become stranger than any casting controversy, any accent complaint, or any Batman-shaped helmet meme currently flooding social media. Keep it in mind.
We are coming back to it, and when we do, it changes how you see everything else in this story. Before we go further, if you love peeling back the curtain on how ancient myths become modern blockbusters, hit subscribe now, because this channel exists to dig past the trailers and the press junkets to find what actually happened behind the scenes.
Drop a like if you are excited for this film, and tell me in the comments which casting choice surprised you the most, because by the time this video ends, you may have a completely different answer. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey opens in theaters and IMAX on July 17, 2026, and it is, by almost any measure, one of the most anticipated films of the decade. It is his first release since Oppenheimer swept the Academy Awards in 2023, and it carries an almost impossible weight of expectation, because this time he is not adapting a screenplay, a comic book, or a true crime case file. He is adapting a poem that is roughly 28 centuries old. A poem so foundational to Western storytelling that entire university departments exist just to study it, line by line. That poem,
composed by the Greek poet Homer, sometime around the 8th or 7th century BCE, was never meant to be read silently on a page. It was sung. Wandering performers called Eidos recited it aloud across generations, accompanied by stringed instruments, long before anyone wrote a single word down. And here's the first thing many people do not realize going into Nolan's film. The original Odyssey does not tell its story in order. It begins in medias res, dropping the audience into the middle of the action, with Odysseus already trapped, already suffering, a decade into the Trojan War's aftermath, and years into a doomed voyage home. The audience only learns what happened at Troy. Through flashbacks, Odysseus recounts to strangers who take him in. Nolan, a director who built his entire career on scrambled timelines from Memento to Inception to Dunkirk, seems almost destined to adapt this exact structure.
Whether he has actually kept the story non-linear, though, is something even trade reporters admit is still unconfirmed heading into release, and that uncertainty alone has become part of the pre-release mystery. Now let's talk about who is walking this journey alongside him, because the casting here has become the center of a genuine, ongoing public debate, and understanding both sides of it matters if you want the full picture. Matt Damon plays Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca. In Homer's text, Odysseus is defined less by brute strength and more by metis, a specific kind of cunning intelligence. That is the same quality that lets him blind the Cyclops Polyphemus by first tricking him with a false name, Nobody, so that when Polyphemus screams for help, his fellow Cyclopes hear him shouting that nobody is hurting him and simply walk away. That is the character at his core, a trickster who survives through wit rather than muscle. When the first promotional image of Damon in costume surfaced, historians and costume enthusiasts online immediately flagged inconsistencies between his armor and what Bronze Age Greek warriors would likely have worn. That early friction turned out to be a preview of a much larger pattern that would follow the film for months. Tom Holland plays Telemachus, Odysseus' son. In the poem, Telemachus' arc, often called the Telemachy, covers the first 4 books, following him as he matures from a passive boy into someone determined to search for his missing father, guided along the way by the goddess Athena in disguise. Anne Hathaway plays Penelope, the wife famous for outwitting 108 suitors who have overtaken her home, by claiming she must finish weaving a burial shroud before choosing a new husband, then secretly unraveling her work every night to buy Odysseus more time. Zendaya plays Athena, goddess of wisdom and Odysseus' closest divine ally. Charlize Theron plays a sorceress figure from the poem. And here is where our first documented contradiction shows up. Some early promotional materials described her role as Circe, the witch who transforms Odysseus' crew into pigs, before eventually aiding them. More recent reporting closer to release, however, identifies her character specifically as Calypso, the nymph who holds Odysseus captive on the island of Ogygia for years. Which description is accurate depends entirely on which wave of press coverage you consult, and it is a small but telling reminder that even basic factual details about this production have shifted as filming and marketing evolved over nearly 2 years. Robert Pattinson plays Antinous, described in the poem as the cruelest and most arrogant of Penelope's suitors, and Pattinson has also taken on narration duties in some of the darker, more grounded promotional footage. John Bernthal plays Menelaus, the king of Sparta, and Helen's husband, and one teaser highlights a tense confrontation between his character and Telemachus, echoing the section of the poem where the young prince visits Spartan royalty, seeking word of his father. But here is where the story shifts from being simply about actors and roles into something much larger. Lupita Nyong'o was cast as Helen of Troy, the face that, according to legend, launched 1,000 ships, and also as Clytemnestra. Nyong'o was born in Mexico City to Kenyan parents and raised largely in Kenya, and her casting as a figure, long imagined as the pinnacle of ancient Greek beauty, sparked immediate, widespread debate online. Nolan publicly defended the decision, praising the strength and poise she brings to the role. Elliot Page, a transgender actor, was cast in a role that remained undisclosed for months, fueling speculation that ranged from the legendary warrior Achilles to the ill-fated crewman Elpenor, with reporting closer to release converging on the character Sinon, a soldier connected to Odysseus. That extended uncertainty generated enormous online commentary, including sharply critical remarks from high-profile public figures, specifically about the possibility of Page playing Achilles. Indian actor Himesh Patel was cast as Eurylochus, Odysseus's cautious second-in-command who repeatedly clashes with him over crucial decisions during the voyage, and in one of the more unexpected casting announcements of the entire production, rapper Travis Scott was confirmed in the role of a Homeric bard, with Nolan directly connecting the choice to the idea that rap descends from the same oral storytelling tradition through which Homer's epic itself was originally composed and passed down. Reactions to this ensemble have not been unified. Some viewers and critics praised the production for assembling a genuinely international cast, reflecting a modern, global audience. Others, including a portion of Greek commentators and cultural critics, pointed to what they described as a notable absence of Greek actors in a story rooted at the foundation of Greek cultural identity, arguing that ancient Greek mythology has often been adapted by Hollywood, without corresponding attention to contemporary Greek representation. Both positions have been repeated across multiple outlets covering the film's marketing rollout, and neither has emerged as a settled consensus. It remains, as of this recording, an open and unresolved public debate, rather than a case with a clear right or wrong answer. Then there is the dialogue itself. When trailers began circulating, viewers noted how modern and colloquial the language sounded. In one exchange, Antinous mocks Telemachus, using distinctly contemporary, almost aggressive slang, a contrast to the more elevated, formal tone some viewers expected from an ancient Greek epic. Classicist Emily Wilson, whose acclaimed 2017 translation of the Odyssey rendered the poem in accessible modern English, and who reportedly influenced Nolan's own preparation for the project, has publicly pushed back on the assumption that older-sounding language is inherently more faithful to the source material, noting that Homer's original poem was composed in the living, spoken language of its own era, not in deliberately archaic or elevated speech. Other viewers remained unconvinced regardless, with one widely shared online comment describing the dialogue as jarringly modern for a story many expected to sound more poetic. The costumes generated a separate wave of commentary. Online audiences pointed out that Benny Safdie's armor as Agamemnon visually resembled Batman's suit, prompting jokes questioning how ancient Greeks apparently sailed in Viking-style ships while wearing armor associated with a modern superhero. Other commenters pushed back on the historical framing of the criticism,
suggesting the core complaint was less about accuracy and more about the costume design simply reading as visually unremarkable to some viewers. Both readings circulated widely, without either fully displacing the other. Underneath all of this cultural discussion sits a genuinely massive physical production. The budget has been widely estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars, making this Nolan's most expensive film to date, though the studio has not published an official figure. It was shot using newly developed IMAX camera technology, described by IMAX's own chief executive as equipment never used in a production before, lighter and quieter than earlier generations, enabling filming approaches that were previously impractical. Production spanned real locations across 5 countries, including Morocco, Italy, Greece, Iceland, and Scotland, standing in for Troy, the land of the Cyclops, the mythical realm associated with the god of the winds, and the coastlines of Ithaca itself. A Viking ship was even filmed mooring in Inverness, Scotland, for sequences representing the ancient Mediterranean world. A detail that illustrates how far the production stretched geography in service of atmosphere over strict literal accuracy. Opening weekend, IMAX 70mm tickets went on sale a full year before release and reportedly sold out within hours, an unusually early and intense level of demand for any film. Yet despite that early enthusiasm, audience interest tracking closer to release has reportedly softened somewhat, with some analysts linking that shift directly to the ongoing casting debate, even as most industry observers still expect the film to perform strongly at the box office, given Nolan's track record. Now, remember that voice mentioned at the very beginning, the one narrating a version of the Odyssey right now, but not belonging to a living storyteller in the way you would assume. Here is the reveal. Weeks before Nolan's film reached theaters, an AI audio company called 11 Labs released a complete 13-hour audiobook version of the Odyssey, narrated in a voice built from a digital clone of actor Michael Caine, Nolan's own longtime collaborator from The Dark Knight and The Prestige. Caine did not read a single line of this recording himself. He had licensed his voice to the company previously, and this new production combined that cloned voice with more than 20 additional AI-generated character voices, AI-generated sound design, and an AI-composed musical score produced by a team of 4 people in roughly 6 weeks. Caine released a public statement describing the project as a bridge between classical storytelling and digital innovation, and reports indicate he was consulted during production and approved the marketing materials. Though whether he personally listened to the completed 13-hour result has not been confirmed by anyone connected to the project, and here is the detail that makes this genuinely notable, rather than a simple piece of trivia. This audiobook has no official connection to Nolan's film. It was released independently, timed to coincide with the wave of anticipation the film's marketing had already generated, which means that, right now, listeners encountering it may reasonably assume it carries some official tie to the movie they are about to see, when in fact it is a separate, independently produced audio project that happens to share the same source material and release window. It is, in its own way, a modern echo of the exact kind of misdirection Odysseus himself was famous for within the poem, presenting something as one thing while it is, in fact, another, and leaving the audience to work out the difference on their own. Whether Nolan's Odyssey ultimately honors the spirit of Homer's original text, or reshapes it into something the ancient poet would barely recognize, remains a question only the finished film can answer, starting July 17th. What is already clear is that the story of a man trying to find his way home through monsters, temptation, cultural debate, and now, artificial imitation, has once again proven strong enough, nearly 3,000 years later, to make the entire world argue, wonder, and watch. If this deep dive into the real history and hidden chaos surrounding the Odyssey kept you hooked, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next one. Drop a like if you learned something you did not expect. And let me know in the comments whether you think Nolan's version will honor Homer's legacy or completely rewrite it. See you in the next video.